Exercise 2-4E. Questions 1 through 2. Listen to part of a talk in a science class.
As you recall from our previous discussion, the chemistry of life is organized into metabolic pathways. Next year in your organic chemistry lab, you'll go into metabolism, in more depth. Since this is an intro course, you need only a general understanding of the process for now. There's a wonderful videotape I'd like you to know about that will help you review for the test next week. It's part of the Transformations series that was on television about a year ago. The episode you should watch is called The Industry of a Cell. I strongly urge you to see it. I believe our library has more than one copy. It shows lots of examples, the many ways that cells use energy for metabolism. For example, it shows how bacteria in the headlight of a certain fish, how these bacteria take the energy stored in food and convert it into light in a process called bioluminescence. You should all try to see this program before next week. I highly recommend it. In fact, you can expect to see examples from it on the test.
Number 1. What can be inferred about the course in which the talk is given? Number 2. What does the professor imply about the videotape? Questions 3 through 6. Listen to an instructor give a talk about jazz.
The origins of jazz are as richly textured as the music itself. The term jazz really covers many different kinds of music. In the late 19th century, African Americans began performing the folk music known as the blues, whose origins lay in the work songs of slavery days. Within the African American community, the blues evolved into popular commercial music. In 1914, a black orchestra leader named W.C. Handy wrote the St. Louis Blues. Adapting the African American folk idiom to European conventions of orchestration and harmony, Handy produced a hit song. The St. Louis Blues was tremendously influential among black and white musicians, and Handy's style of music became famous under the name of jazz. Early jazz musicians were active in many cities and towns throughout the southern United States. It was New Orleans, with its long tradition of African American music, that was the home of many fathers of jazz. After World War I, the musicians of New Orleans joined the general northward migration of African Americans. The first great national center of jazz was Chicago. From there, the music entered the mainstream and even gave its name to the decade of the 1920s. Jazz, blending African American folk roots with elements of popular music and European classical traditions, has been called America's classical music.
Number 3. For which course would the talk be most appropriate? Number 4. What does the instructor imply about the style of music known as the blues? Number 5. According to the instructor, why is the song St. Louis Blues significant? Number 6. Based on the information in the talk, indicate whether each statement below accurately describes jazz. Questions 7 through 10. Listen to part of a lecture in a marine biology class.
Land animals move easily through air because air does not slow them down. Sea creatures, on the other hand, have to move through water, which is hundreds of times thicker than air. A sea animal has to push itself through water in order to move. Sea animals use many different ways to swim, creep, or glide through water. Fish are able to swim by bending their bodies into waves. They have flattened fins and tails that push against the water like oar blades, converting their body waves into forward movement. The size of a fish's tail contributes to its swimming speed. Small tail fins are found in slow swimmers like the eel. The medium-sized tail of the bass is linked with a medium to fast swimming speed. Long, pointed tail lobes like those on the marlin are found only on fast swimmers. Sea mammals like whales and dolphins swim in a very fish-like way, except for one important difference. Because their ancestors lived on the land, they developed tails that moved up and down. Whales and dolphins wave their tails up and down rather than side to side like fish do. The seahorse is a fish whose tail is not used for swimming at all. The seahorse uses its thin, coiled tail to attach itself to seaweed, like a monkey's tail holds onto a tree branch. Squids and octopuses move in a completely different way. They use a type of jet propulsion, shooting water out through a nozzle to force themselves along. And then there are the creatures that live on the bottom of the sea. Sea slugs, limpets, and whelks creep on a single flat piece of muscle called a foot. Ripples pass along the foot, which allows these animals to glide smoothly forward.
Number 7. What is the main purpose of the lecture? Number 8. Select the drawing of the creature that is probably the fastest swimmer. Number 9. Listen again to part of the lecture, then answer the question.
Sea mammals like whales and dolphins swim in a very fish-like way, except for one important difference. Because their ancestors lived on the land, they developed tails that moved up and down. Whales and dolphins wave their tails up and down rather than side to side like fish do.
What is probably true about whales and dolphins? Number 10. What can be inferred about creatures that live on the bottom of the ocean?